discussion. We have some things on the agenda here. First of all, resolution 3527, land use permit application. That's the one that we merged the two together.
It looks great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had nothing to do with it. I
Well,
think it came out good.
it looks,
I think
yeah,
it's what we wanted.
it looks great.
I have a couple of change or suggestions on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th whereas and the 6th whereas. It says it is in the interest for the city. It should be of the city, I believe.
Yep.
And then on the last whereas, on the second line, the use of in kind, we need in kind of in there. The last whereas, Diane. The use of in kind services, yeah.
I had a question on that.
And
one.
I'm still talking, I'm sorry, Dave. Where it says the city desires and the city desires, that's duplicative. If you could come up with a different one for the second one, so it doesn't look like it's the same one.
James
top
actually
two.
did this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
James did this, Diane did.
Oh, well, yeah, but, he's been working on that.
Oh,
So he's not here. Right. So I have to tell you.
the city does,
Yeah, the
First
city
and second
desires
whereas.
to, and then the next one, the city desires to. I mean, just let him know if,
Different word in there.
yeah, it's not a biggie, but the other three are. I mean, the other three are really. And I know James isn't here, but Diane was working on that, that's why.
I didn't know she was, I thought I think it was
Mary.
Mary.
Mary,
It was
I think
Mary.
Mary.
Oh, was it Mary?
yeah,
Okay.
but I'll make sure I get that to her.
Okay, thanks, kiddo.
Any more discussion on the resolution? Dave?
On the final whereas, I had a comment, and are you collecting the notes to work with James's, what I'm getting, but the to consider, I think would be to allow, but I had a question about that whole last whereas, because we already passed that, so I wasn't sure what the role of that was in this conversation. So the final whereas, that basically allows for the use of in-kind services.
I think it was just to make it clear what the resolution
Oh,
was.
this
Because
is clear, yeah, it just
Yeah.
needs the of in there.
Yeah, I just think that the last whereas though is just to make it clear exactly why we're even changing that, why we have this.
Yes.
That's what we wanted.
So I wanted,
You're right.
so then I said I'd like allow as opposed to consider the use of in-kind services.
That's not a, that doesn't change anything, Dave. I mean, that doesn't change the intent.
Well, I'll consider, you know.
Well,
You know,
in my mind, it's significant, but that's okay.
Yeah,
The other question that I had, Mayor, was actually, there are two significant issues which are kind of at the root of this whole discussion, that I'm curious how we resolve or how we address them. One of them is that the farmer's market is done, and so we were talking about, that was kind of what drove this whole thing. And then the second one that appeared in the latter half of the year is the Home of Champions Rodeo. And so to me, we still need to address how this ultimately resolves or doesn't resolve, or if another action needs to be taken before we're done with this. I know, I had a conversation with Sammy, ran into her at the dog park and asked for updates and, you know, what from her perspective on the farmer's market. And from as near as I could tell, she was, I don't know, same old, same as every past year, and that was at the very basis of starting this.
Right.
So if we haven't resolved those two outstanding questions, we still haven't done what we're trying to do, in my opinion.
and may I suggest, Dave, it's not the Home of Champions Rodeo, it's the Home of Champions Rodeo Parades. There is a difference, because rodeo is always up there at the rodeo grounds, the parades are in town. We need to make that distinction so that everybody knows.
Okay.
And I am on the board for the Home of Champions Rodeo, so but it should say parades on there to distinguish.
I think that this resolution should solve the issue with the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty well laid out what is expected from them.
Okay, so,
But I think the Home of Champions rodeo parades is a whole nother issue that we need to have a discussion on.
Yeah. And I think we were gonna look at the ordinance too. Weren't we gonna open that up and,
Well, there was talk last
Because-
meeting, Becky
Right.
had talked about, it's a Supreme Court case and whatnot, so.
yeah, you know, the people using the sidewalk to hand out their literature.
Well, and that might just, maybe we just don't have a land use fee.
It kinda gets down to it sometimes.
Maybe we pay the whole thing.
I feel good about that, carrying the resolution on the council and,
Yeah,
we'll look at the ordinance later.
I would recommend that we have, and maybe it's James that you direct have a conversation, because my understanding, and I don't wish to speak to somebody who's not able to be here, but the in-kind services at the $25 an hour sort of thing, as I understood it, there was a concern still with that doing on a weekly basis, that they were basically asking people who are already contributing time and doing it. So this, our intention is that they would use this to meet that $100 each week fee, is that correct? That's what we're
they
thinking?
were gonna trim the trees around town. And
So
they-
that's-
the farmer's market was going to trim the trees around town.
So that's back to the MOU discussion. That doesn't match this of 4 hours for each day that they do it.
No, we were trying to get away from the MOU and go with the resolution, and so that everybody, every group, every organization followed the same.
So I just wanna make sure that I understand then, that the expectation is that this is the mechanism by which the farmer's market is able to do it, and rather than paying $100 for each day of the farmer's
They're cleaning
market,
the restroom.
they would do 4 hours, because we have defined through an ordinance that in lieu of the $100, you do 4 hours at 25. So that would be 4 hours per each week that we are expecting them to do of some sort of in-kind services for the city. And I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page. And I would suggest we may wanna have James reach out and have that discussion, just to make sure, because my read on it was she was apprehensive, oh, is that what the expectation is? That's, that they still were not necessarily happy with that.
Well, and this doesn't have a fee attached to an hourly rate attached to it.
No,
It
this-
just says, upon majority vote of the city council, a nonprofit organization may replace the $100 per day daily use fee with in-kind services or goods. And so that would be the decision, of the majority of the council.
Right.
What constitutes $100 per day daily use fee of in-kind services?
We didn't spell that out in, was it 928 was referenced here? I thought we had spelled that out previously, or
It might
maybe
be
it
in the
was.
application,
Is
I
it?
don't have the application.
I have the application here. I happen to bring that.
It's spelled out exactly the same. Approval of the council.
With in-kind services, so maybe that was in an earlier. Version that we didn't pass in here, because I'm looking at it to see if it's in the instructions. Okay, so,
I don't recall that either, but what I'm hearing you say is that they're gonna be required to spend 16 hours working for the city to have,
It doesn't say that
No.
necessarily. It
so
doesn't
we
say
just
that.
need to agree on
What
what's
they're gonna
worth
do.
$100.
Yep, what's worth $100, and it doesn't specify, just,
So for example, is cleaning restrooms worth $100 to this table?
Is to me, otherwise I have to do it.
You do.
the problem that we're gonna, the
that's the
problem that we're
discussion that
gonna.
you have to have when the land use application comes in front of you.
Well, and I'm okay, like I said, because I'm not seeing, I remember when this idea first came out, and at one point we did have that it said it was $25 an hour, but I'm not seeing that in the latest copy that we got 2 weeks ago.
I mean, we might have
Um,
voted that idea, but
The concern that I would have would be that, again, what we're looking for is consistency. So if we tell one group that cleaning the restrooms or trimming a tree is worth $100, and then we tell another group something that they feel is disparagingly different, we just open ourselves up a little bit.
And it, like it says, it's up to council.
I don't think we can determine what all the nonprofits might do for us at this point. That will have to be determined when they come here and say, in lieu of paying the $100 per day, we will do this or that.
Right.
We propose X, and then the council will
Now,
approve.
in the case of the parade, I could say, in lieu of paying the $100 a day, I will go out and power wash in front of the village shop and get rid of all the confetti. And she said it took her 5 hours to do that.
So,
It got tracked inside.
so if we do that, then does that work?
Okay,
Does that solve
Okay.
both of them?
Let's
Does that
solve
bang?
Okay,
So I'm good with that. I know that there are interested parties that will be reviewing the minutes and the recordings tonight. So I just want to make sure that it was clear and understanding, and then we'll get the feedback, so.
Now, and the question that I would arise is, when I pay for the yellow tape for the police department, does that count against my $100 per day?
that would be up to
That would
council
be a-
to
Yeah.
decide.
I mean,
That would be
I'm
up to
just
the
tossing
council,
that
but
out, that
it
is,
certainly could
I
be
think-
in-kind
yeah,
services.
and I
good.
also
Sure.
paid for the signs that were put up, to say no parking, the red and white sign.
So,
That
So
would-
you would include
that-
that in
And
your
those would be
application?
considered
Right.
in the
That would
in-kind
be
services.
considered.
Yeah, that's what, I just wanna make sure everybody understands. If I buy something for the city, that goes toward the $100 a day.
and so what I think,
Hang on to your receipts.
Yeah.
well,
Or, you know,
Are we-
$100
so
per
to
day.
Are
go
we
back to
carrying
what my
this too
two.
far?
No, I think actually, going back to what my original concern / question is, which is, have we addressed the two that come to mind that are kind of behind this, the farmer's market and the Home of Champions rodeo parades? And I think what I'm hearing, and Gloria, please correct me if I'm wrong, is we're good with this and we can use this for the Home of Champions rodeo parades
Sure,
as
sure.
well.
And I would say, I paid for this, and I paid for that, and I paid for whatever.
Plus your time to do it.
Well, my time isn't included in that.
No, but I'm.
Could put a value to
Well,
it.
maybe,
Cross that bridge when
and,
we get
and by the way,
Yeah.
my hourly rate is $150.
That's a deal.
All right, thank
And
you.
does
ma'am.
that,
I
does
think
that
it- I think
include
it addresses
my,
both
does
of
that
those.
include my work
So
prior
I'm-
to the parade?
I'm good with that. I just wanted to have that conversation to put those two things to rest. So what I'm hearing is it's not an hourly dollar association, that's been removed. That when somebody prepares their application and it comes toward council, council will approve and say, or, we need a little bit more.
Right.
And then that will address both of the situations, and one of the two parties is sort of represented here tonight through a couple of individuals. And does that sound like it's in line with, that'll work for you guys too?
Okay.
We can go home, that was worth it right there.
That was good. All right. Any other discussion? Discussion from the public? Okay. Let's move on now. Capital improvement plan, and this is just for discussion. This is not totally finished, but we're in the process of doing a grant, applying for a grant. And one of the things that helps us through that grant process is to have a CIP. By just looking at it and going through it, as we sit here or as you did at home, we're working on it. It shows that we're working on it. And that way it allows us to carry on with this grant. The grant is the Grand Avenue water line, from 20th to 22nd. We found out that it was, do you want to explain that line for us?
Yeah, there's grants out there for, like it'd be about the coal mine effect, there's grants out there available for that, so, we're applying for that grant on this particular deal because this water line was put in back in the days of when the coal mine, it's still an old cast iron line, which we discovered. And, so there's real good potential that we could get the grant. James doing a very good job of putting all the circumstance together, why and how we would fit into that mineral grant application deal. So, and part of that would be that these lines, which, like the Hagen water line, was put back in the days of the coal mine running in. And so, it just works out that these grants available, and we're very aggressive in trying to, any grant we got a possibility at. We're really, trying to be aggressive, so that project happened to be in here, so one of the deals is stipulation of provision with them, yeah, if we can show that it's, we have a CIP that has that in there listed, which it has been on other CIPs, like they're back in 2008, which, in the same interim, we found in the 2008 water project that it was designed, engineered, and planned to be done with that project. Now, why it didn't get done, whether it was the fact of funds or timing or whatever, but so it's already an engineered project with the DEQ approved. So, talk with Chad, he thinks we can just move forward and ask them to reapprove that, which would save us from having re-engineering done everything, and we could move forward. If we got the grant, we could put them 2 blocks of water main in next year. It's gotta be in by the end of the month. And so this draft deal, and James and I have worked really hard with them and stuff, and we're really happy with, once again, it's a pretty aggressive CIP, just like the last one. It covers a lot of area, although, I mean, with the police department, the library, all the parts in, the only one they didn't let in was Lottie, because all she wanted was a new city hall.
It was a building for sale though.
But anyway, like I said, we've been through it, and we're really happy with the deal. Now, there is still some tie-in finishes, and one of the important parts when we get to the grading them and picking up where, once we get to that point, you know, where's the council, where are the citizens, and what are the most important to you to move forward with? One of mine is the stormwater. Stormwater, and it affects mostly the people on the north end of town. That's where the stormwater ends up. We are very undersized, but in processing this, getting this in there with our stormwater in there, we have a $500,000 grant hanging there that we've been awarded for stormwater. We just have to have the funding source in there showing that we are putting it in from the city side so that we can accept that grant and fund the rest of it, to move forward. And why we put in for that one when we get it, because those grants only come up every other year. So we have a 2-year window to use that grant. If we don't use it, we lose it, or someone comes in ahead of us that's got a shovel-ready project and moves forward, we could lose that grant under those circumstances. Thinking in the way we did, where this is a 4-phase, project over the stormwater, if we did this one in the 2-year, and then we'd be ready to apply for a grant the next 2 year, and in the interim of doing the 4 terms, we could actually end up with $2 million in grants in the stormwater project and get the stormwater approved. So that's our intent, working with the engineers, and what we're looking at trying to do is, you know, if we can get a $500,000 grant every 2 years and on a $13 million project, it knocks down, you know, $2 million is a lot of money for a city like us. So, that's one of the deals. But we've been through this with them and had made changes. So now, if you read through it, is there anything you see in it that you don't like or think it's wrong or?
I have a couple of questions, but I want to go back to the grant that needs to be used in 2 years. What's the date that needs to get used by?
We were awarded the grant in March, I believe. So we have to put it into effect within the 2-year deal. We have to actually put forward the planning and the deal that we're gonna spend it in that, on this stormwater in that time.
Before like March 2021. Is it a matching grant or is it
It's a
just a
matching
project?
grant. Yeah, we have to match that plus, have the funding for the whatever part of project we're doing, which it has to, the phases the way they are have to be done in each phase that way. There's other grants available because of the I&I we have in our system. That's why this got that, because we have so much infiltration and the stormwater into our sanitary. And so with the DEQ, that's a real big push for us to get that out of our sanitary. And there's other grants through the state, through the highway department, because actually the storm drains on the highway between 8th Street and 14th run into our sanitary. So there's a real possibility as we move forward to get more funding through the Montana Highway deal to also help in these projects. And we're moving on all of this, but I really would like to see us do something, in researching, you know, that we've talked about stormwater districts, all these other deals. I really think the best move we could make is make a stormwater utility. Which is the council's deal. They have to put up the resolution deal, go to the public with it, do it, but you can vote on it, you can say, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna add $10 to you're gonna get a water, sewer, and it's gonna say stormwater. And then $10 just to figure out that it's kind of relative, but what I'm saying, so everyone who has a deal will pay an extra $10, that goes directly and tied to the stormwater. So for the next 10 or 12 years, while this project's going on, we have the funding showing that we can make this happen. The community is backing and wants to do the stormwater. And then, like I said, it gives us better opportunity for grants. If we have something, a stormwater district, a stormwater utility, something showing that we are funding the stormwater project in the community, we can move forward, and there's more opportunities for us to do that, but it's something we need to move on.
Finish your statement.
No, I'm just saying, it's really, I think that's really important. In my priorities of what, I think the stormwater is moved right up there in one of the top. We have some more water line stuff that we can, but our water deal, we're getting more funding, more water in reserve and stuff to do that. Like we've funded the PER for the water, which is something we have to have, which is another thing, a PER, goes a long ways. If you have a PER for these deals, that goes a long way for accepting this grant money or getting the grant money. We have our stormwater master plan was a big part of us getting this grant because we already invested funds showing that we want to do something about our stormwater. And I mean, we've been aggressive moving forward, and me personally, I'd like to stay that way of getting these projects. The infrastructure in the city is not gonna get any better. The stormwater is really truly deteriorated, and there's parts of town we don't have stormwater. Any kind of drain, and that's running down and ending up, you know, overfeeding the sewer system, flooding out the north end of town. And I think it's just something we really need to look at, coming up with something. Like I said, those alternatives, we talked about that 1% of the resort tax going toward there. Well, on the average, what we're doing right now, that's about $250,000. That's not enough to meet the match. So I think there needs to be creative. We need to be creative and figure out, you know, how can we at least hurt the citizens' pocket, but still get the funds? Because in the bottom line, the taxpayers are going to pay for it one way or the other. But the least effect we can make on Reed, and it's going to be a long-term project, we know that, but that we can continue to fund it and actually move forward. Because there is no, without a funding a district or a utility payment for it, we aren't gonna make the matching funds or the costs that go above it.
Diane,
Micah can go first.
Micah?
I really like the idea of the stormwater district. I think that's the way that this table should proceed. Explain something to me. If we created a district just for phase one, say it's $10 a month or $10 a year, probably $10 a month per household, and we get the matching grant, we move forward. 2 years from now, do we have to create another stormwater? So we have to create a district for each phase of the project.
That's why I think a stormwater utility is a better alternative than a stormwater district. If you form a utility, and when we got, I spoke with Shelby, Montana, sent me the information on how they formed a stormwater utility. And so what it does, you can do it through the council with resolution stuff, and you have public hearings and post it, and then you vote on it, so then it just shows up on your water bill. You pay an extra $10 a month over the next 10 or 12 years. And then when the project is up to the point that we've got it up there, then you can drop that price down for just a maintenance of it, so that there's stormwater maintenance. But you can fund it through the years of getting the projects done through a utility. It seems to me it's the more, because it affects everyone, the golf course, everyone in town. As you see as you look at the deal, there's a part of it that deals with the country club estate stormwater is a problem.
Diane?
Is the $10 a month fee, how is that figured out?
That's just the number we just went with. Now, what we do is we decided to do that, then we go through Dorsey and Whitney, and they do the deal of the amount of hookups we've got, what the funding would be, and they would actually, it might be 8, it might be 7. I mean, they do the same thing as they do when they do a SID. They do the study of what the fee would be to work to get the funding. You still hire them to actually do the paperwork, do the deal, but the district is done very simply through the council. We wanna move forward with this, yes, we want Dorsey and Whitney move forward with this, give us a deal, they'll come back and say, here's what we recommend as the monthly fee through this. You know, cause they have the information of what the projected costs of the projects are and what, so they would look at the long term and how many hookups we've got and what the funding would be. And then it would be up to council, yeah, okay, it comes out to $8 a month. Yeah, we like that, then you move forward with it. If you don't like it, we look at a stormwater district then would be actually, it'd be the same thing. You'd have to go to Dorsey Whitney, they'd say, well, do you do it by the square foot of the ground, the impervious ground? Does a commercial guy that's got the paved lot pay more than so I mean, that's a more intense, more costly to do a stormwater district than to do a stormwater utility. Does you understand what I'm saying there?
Absolutely.
I'm actually much more comfortable with the utility idea than the district as well. In areas that I've lived in prior to living with here, stormwater has been a line item on the city tax, just like trash, which we do differently here, but, and I think it fits in very similar to the water rates where we discovered, hey, we should be charging more for our water and we haven't been, and we did it. It's like, hey, there's a service we're providing that we've not been charging for and we ought to be. And that does have regulations that are behind and basically establishing it and calling it a utility, but I really like that idea, so. That's a new one, but I like it.
Robbie?
Is that usually, is it Platt or Hagen where the water comes squirting up out of the Hagen? So like past that area, that's where you'd use the pump truck to see if there's obstruction or something?
We've been doing that, we have, and there's two things that happened, is the old line is really badly deteriorated. There's roots in it, there's breaks in it, and it's so undersized. All of the stormwater that ties in, and it all ends up in that Hagen, which we have a 15-inch line going out of town. So when you take all the storm drains that run into it, and by the time it gets down there, the hydraulic pressure pushes the manhole lids off the storm drain on the north end of town, and then it's running back out on the street, and then going to the people north of that.
So we think from that point on to start with, go with a bigger.
Yeah, that, in phase one, that's the deal, is to enlarge the outfall. You have to start that's storm drain, you have to start at the bottom end, and enlarge your outfall and bring it up, and then as you tie in, and with the storm water deal, that's what they did, was study the hydraulics, and so they've kind of had a preliminary sizing of what we need to do. And so we would move forward. Phase one starts at the outfall up to 5th Street, which is where the water we have, and that would bring that, so it would handle the water we have now, but then we still have to get the storm drains out of the sanitary. If we took them out of the sanitary right now and added them to Hagen Avenue, I think every manhole on Hagen Avenue would pop off and flood everywhere.
Like they did on the 4th of July 5 years ago.
Yeah, whenever it's wet,
Yeah.
they were all over town.
So we have a lot of other projects in here too. Does anyone want to speak on them, or do you want to stay on the stormwater?
No, that's just one, yeah.
I wanted to ask one, I didn't get to finish my last question, and it's probably for the city clerk. So my understanding, if we did it as utilities, we'd probably set it up as a new enterprise fund specifically. Would we still be allowed to use dollars from other sources in that enterprise? I know that stuff that went into that enterprise fund couldn't go out, but could we still add to that? So could we take stuff like the 1% and put that into that utility fund, that enterprise fund? And could we take stuff from general and augment that utility fund as well?
In general?
From the general fund, we can add to a utility fund, it just can't go the other direction, correct?
Well,
See,
don't
that
know
was
what
one
you
of the
would
things
take
that-
from the general fund to put into a utility.
There's no money.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Well, we're kind of doing it now. I mean, if it's not coming from one of the other funds, I just,
So
is it a
currently on the
one-way?
stormwater, it's coming out of sewer, and that is because it's infiltrating the sewer. So that's why the money is coming out of sewer currently. And I'm sure it could continue to come from the sewer also, you know, the two of them, because it's still, until it's done infiltrating the sewer, I mean, it's still, because that's,
Yeah, and
we
that,
talked
that's,
to you about.
yeah, the I, but that's one of the deals, the DEQ, if we've got stormwater running in our sanitary, they want it out of there as bad as we do. And it would be a win-win, because once we got it out of the sewer, and we quit treating, 45% of the water we treat is stormwater and infiltration, it would cost us less to run that sewer, because it would not have to aerate and collect everything, plus our discharge would drop. The gallons we discharge to the creek would drop in thousands of gallons, and that would bring our cost of running it, cost of the, testing and all, everything would come down in the sewer costs, which eventually, someday, when I would look at it, would bring the cost, we could drop the cost of the sewer rate. As this all came together, it would be a win-win for the city. Once we got that done, we would be treating less water, we would cost us less to run it, plus we would be paying less in testing and all the things we have to do because of the volume that we treat.
And it allows us to handle growth without having to build or expand facilities, which is a significant issue.
Diane?
My question has to do with the resort tax. Is it possible to do the resort tax and the utility district?
If we were gonna do that, when we went to Dorsey Whitney, we'd say, okay, we have voted, we want this 1% is gonna be tied to the stormwater also. So then they would take that into consideration of, okay, they're gonna add this variable of 250,000 a year in there also, so then where do the funds, what's it gotta come up to, and they would take that on consideration, and that might drop the monthly cost. You know, it would affect it for sure.
Micah?
My question is gonna dovetail with your statement. I just ran some real quick numbers. You said somebody else is gonna figure it out. We're using $10 per lot for 12 months a year. That's only $250,000.
No,
That doesn't
per
even meet the match that we need for the grant.
Yeah.
So we would need to do the $10 figure plus the 1% to even.
Well, no, the $10 will be per utility hookup, which we have 2,000 something.
I figured 2,000 at $10 a month,
Yeah.
$120 a year times 2,000 is $240K.
Yeah.
So we're still
Yeah,
$250,000 short of the matching grant, so we would need that plus the 1% or $20 a month.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because I want to take that back to the committee, to the resort tax committee. And is that the direction that this council needs to make recommendations to, and that we take that back to the committee, I guess?
I would like to see it move that way, because if we had the 1% in there, and we were forming a stormwater utility, and we figured it out, this stormwater master plan that we paid for and did would move forward, and we could actually, and take that over the next 10 to 12 years, we could get $2 to $2.5 million in grants on top of that to help. So as you start adding that, you take a $13 million project and you're take $2.5 million out of it, or two, whatever we could. And you know, and then so, and the same thing, there's funding available through the state. I mean, we would aggressively go after every bit of funding we possibly could that we can, that's out there to help make this happen, but we have to make them first steps to make that move forward and show that we're, you know, aggressively going for that. And so that is one of the aspects of this CIP.
That was my question about the other forms going in, because going to Micah's math, it really sounds like we're closer to saying we're gonna have a stormwater utility fee of $20 a month, but if we can get a 1% approved and apply to 2, that's gonna drop to $10 a month as opposed to 20 a month, and that becomes part of the story that you tell when you
Sell the
say
resort tax.
to sell for that 1%.
I know the discussion last night was, amongst the people that were here, is stormwater isn't as glittery, isn't as fun. And the gal that said it said, but I understand that those of you who are involved in the city know how important it really is.
But it's glittery if it's gonna cut my stormwater fee from $20 a month down to $10 a month. It
Well,
just got a
and-
whole lot more glittery.
The thing is that, as the CIP says, not a whole lot can be done until stormwater gets done. And then we can move into the streets or whatever, but anyway.
Is there a way to quantify the savings? I think I've asked this before, like if we're treating 40% less water, dumping less in the tree.
Well, if you took 40% of the water out of what's going in there now, you could drop the cost of the plant by about 40%.
So it's linear, like
It's
that?
just linear like that, because we are taking in 900 to 1,000,000 gallons a day. When we get a big storm, that goes up extensively, and now, so we are right now letting out more water after this last storm Friday. Today, we're letting out more water than we're taking in, because if, the pond brought it in, we can only let out X amount. But now the storm's over, we're taking in less, so we're letting out more, so we're gonna catch up. But if we have storm after storm after storm, it really gets, because when we have to start dumping more, we have to stay within that permit limit by the DEQ, and we really push the window on having the time of day it needs to be in the pond to come out at the right, treatment.
Okay, let's carry on with the CIP.
I think this CIP is something should be published. I think everybody in the community should read it, then they'll see where the money goes.
Well,
It's very well done, Jim. I only got up through page 20 on my edits, and when I finish that, should I take it to James rather?
yeah, James would be fine, James would be better, because we're
Yeah,
both
I'll
working
I'll
with
take
him
it to
very
James, yeah.
closely.
They're minor edits like I always do, but it just makes it perfect.
Dave?
Mayor, to the CIP in general, on page 1, I have a couple comments, and maybe if as other people jump in, or we hit pages, and we can kind of go through in order. On page 1, I note that it starts out that it says that this was done in conjunction with the City Public Works Department. However, that within the CIP, we also talk about parks, we also talk about public safety, and that we cover police vehicles. Have they also been included within that? And if so, should we indicate that and
Every
expand that out to
department
say, so we should probably expand that out, to do that. Page 3, if nobody else had any comments prior to that,
Well, I have a lot of them, but I'm not gonna go.
but
through them.
they're grammatical.
Yeah, they're
type
mostly
things.
grammatical and usage and capitalizations and things like that. It's just the editing thing that I.
On the completed projects on page 3, the golf course and I had questions if we wanted to call it the golf course, or I like, Councilman Mahan's usage of the East Bench in general. I like that as far as, or Red Lodge
West Bench.
Country Club Estates, or East Bench, West Bench,
No,
Country Club
West
Estates.
Bench, East Bench.
Yes, ma'am. I thought that the funding source should reflect that that was an SID as opposed to just the city.
I'd like page 3 to reflect too, what was out of resort tax.
Yeah.
Just so,
Good idea.
I mean, we're really trying to get ourselves organized with this resort tax.
What if you, that, the jetter trucks out of resort tax,
Yeah,
the wastewater PDR, the VFDs were out of the sewer fund, fuel optimization, the camera came out of resort tax. The lift station, the new force main and lift station, if you remember back when the original, I meant to bring that, forgot it, but in the CIP, in the 2015 CIP, there was over $9 million in cost to do what we did for 1.7.
was that partly out of resort tax or not?
Partly out of resort tax, yes, and an SRF loan.
Yeah.
And we also received a $400,000 grant on that project. Generators were out of the deal.
Out of resort?
No, the generators were out of wastewater
Okay.
funds.
the pool engineering analysis, was that on a resort tax?
Yep.
Lions Park Storage Edition is also.
How do we want to,
Lions Park Storage Edition was an intercap loan, was that paid?
It was paid out of resort tax.
Okay.
so Jim, are you the keeper of this document? How do you want us to, as we go through these, how do you want us to share?
Share anything you've got, share with me or with
Suggestions.
James, any comments so that this is the draft and we will get a we need to move forward and get this, but we'll get a final, and that's why we brought it this point. This was after we had been through it several times with them and made some changes. And so,
I think they should all go to James, and that way he can sort it out, and ones that he can answer, he will, and if he has to go to Jim to get answers, technical answers, he can do that. But since James is actually responsible for putting it together, so if we
Okay.
all go
So
to
the generators-
James, and then he can tell which ones he has to ask Jim about,
Okay,
you know, that
and
way,
you look at the
that
generators.
way we're all
funded out
doing
of
the
resort
same
tax.
thing, yeah.
Thanks.
in 2019?
Some of the,
And I don't object to the use of a golf course
The
as a
generator.
terminology, because a lot of people don't know when you say country
How
club
about the-
estates, they don't know what it is.
Stormwater PRE, that came out of.
that came out of the stormwater,
That came out of sewer.
Sewer.
out of sewer, not sewer, out of, yeah.
How about the cemetery mausoleum?
That came out of, but there was a cemetery trust fund
Okay,
money.
Yeah, that was the cemetery capital improvements fund. Okay.
Wow.
There was a homeowner wondering on Hauser and 14th, as you're heading towards the creek, there's a house that sits in back in there behind pine trees. It looked like that road had to get replaced down, is that right? where the
No, he
water
did
line-
that, he hired them because he had that done separate from anything in the city.
Okay, that wasn't.
He lined up with them for them to pave that while they were in town.
That
That
was,
has nothing to do with the city.
you answered the question, thank you.
on page 6, it's a chart about the water projects that need to get done. Are any of those budgeted for in this year's budget?
The water preliminary engineering report is budgeted and they will be getting us a, task order to sign. We budgeted in this year's,
Okay.
budget. And so they will be starting on that. We wanted to get this project done because it's a big part of what they will do now moving forward with our last DEU water was 1998. And luckily the Hagen project was on that, so we were able to use that PER to obtain the grant we got.
On that same chart, the way I read it, because they talked about either it's for this project and or inflated for 2020 estimates, so as I read that, it almost looked like everything there, 1 through 6, was either happening in 2019 or 2020,
No,
and there was nothing beyond that.
no, these
He says,
are all things these are water projects that need to be project. One of the ones that would comes up to me as we'll move to the top list, the pressure reducing valves. When you look at, we just had a deal up here on the north or south end of town where they're right at the resident or the motel up there, they've got 95 pounds of pressure at their, that's way too much.
It's really fun to flush, though.
Also
So-
there on page 6, Jim, under lagoons, that, one paragraph that, from the fact sheet, the last sentence said, "The results of this analysis are considered preliminary due to the lack of receiving water data." Was that our responsibility?
No, that's on the metals deal, it's the DEQ has got a deal going right now, so we don't know what they're gonna do. It's one of those deals when you go to these conferences that they're bringing up, the DEQ brings it up every time, and they're not sure what they're gonna do. But they know that's why we are doing the copper study, we are taking samples, and we've been working with them over the years, getting all the samples they need to move forward on whether we have to treat for metals. If we do, then all of a sudden, here's the big, now you got a $20 million metals treatment you have to do or something. So that's one of the things in the work that they put in here and was also in the last one, because it's one of those deals the DEQ is hanging up over our heads in every community. Big Timber's going through the same testing forms that we are, and that's just part of why it's in there is because it's something that's going to be coming up. And we do take yearly tests, test our coppers. We have 3 different manholes we take tests out of to see there is no copper in our water where it starts. But all of a sudden, in the effluent water, we are finding copper. Well, where's it coming from? Well, it's really determined, back in the 40s and 50s, they used copper for everything. Your water came into a copper line, it runs through it so that it's coming through the copper lines in every house and every building and everything is what they're determining. But what do we do? Tell everybody you've gotta get rid of your copper? That's what so the DEQ is not stepping very fast on this for that reason. We know there's copper when it gets to those dunes, but there's no copper when it starts at our treatment plant.
It
So,
just, the way they said it, lack of receiving water data, like we didn't do what we were supposed to do.
no,
No, I just didn't like the way that was worded.
we're working on it. We've
Yeah, all
actually
the
got,
time.
we have a schedule with them of when we have to have these tests done and what we have.
Diane?
I just wanna go back to what Dave asked about the projects getting done each year, so when Jim was talking about the Hagen Water Project, he said it showed up on the CIP in 1998. So these are projects that, we might be lucky to even still be around, but it's a plan going forward.
The confusion I just had is because on page 5, when it was outlining them, the first 2 or 3, it just gave it as the current cost. And then for the remainders of them, it actually gave it in terms of a 2020 cost, and that was where my confusion came from, and I get that they take longer and than what's there. I just wanted to clarify, because to your point, I don't remember seeing a lot of these budgeted. And so that just to me added a little potential confusion there.
Have to have a lot more.
Yeah, what they do is they do that, giving an estimate of what the cost could be. Now, just like if you go back to the 98 one and look at what the Hagen water line would have cost then, was like a quarter of what we spent on it. In
So-
98, what they estimated it to cost them, but it didn't get moved forward on in 98, it didn't get, in the 2015, it was it. So I mean, like I said, these are the engineers from the, basic, kind of an estimate of what the cost could be, doesn't mean that's what it's gonna cost.
Why not just express it all in current day dollars rather than arbitrarily selecting some to be next year specifically?
Well, any one of these, other than, like I said, that should this Grant Avenue one, or that you're looking at 2 to 3 years, you can get the project. First off, you have to have an engineer, that's a year. Second off, you do the funding, there's another year, and then your 3rd year, you'll build. Just like the Hagen water line, why we were able to, all of a sudden, when we became grant eligible and all of a sudden, we had it on there to do in the future, and we all of a sudden, hey, there's $500,000 available if we move on this. And so we moved on it, and it's done now.
So I'm agreeing with you completely on that,
So,
but given that, why are they expressing it in 2020 dollars specifically?
because you won't see it happen until 2020. 2020 would be the first year you possibly could do any of them. Even if, like I said, even at the Grant Avenue one, should we get that grant, we could do it in 2020. These others, you might not see till 2022, 2023. I mean, there's a, and that's why I've always been, I really like to take some of our water money and like to spend it and get the engineering done. Because if you have the engineering done, you've got a shovel-ready project, and then the state comes up with more, grant money, you're more apt to get it if you're ready to start putting pipe in the ground. That's how the Hagen water, because we did spend the money and got the engineering done, we had no idea where we were gonna be, but we got an estimate of the cost. We got a deal, so we had it shovel-ready, and all of a sudden this grant money came available, and we hit the top of the list, because we were shovel-ready, we got picked first. And that's why I would like to, when we get these and rate these, I'd like to say, okay, well, this one rates up really high, let's get the engineering done on it. Cause if you've got that packet sitting on the desk, ready to go, grant money, funding, it's just easier to move on, and it takes, instead of taking that year, okay, let's do this one, so you're gonna spend a year getting the engineering done, then you're gonna have another year trying to do the funding. And so anytime you look at it, if you're just gonna start on it today, you're looking at it 3 years away.
Diane?
On the Park Avenue water replacement,
Yes.
is it Do we need to do another water rate study to bring that in, or is there money in the rates now that would cover that?
No, I think the rates we're at today, I think what we need, to- one of the things which comes up is, so we're, that 5 year of increasing the fees is over now. But I really think the city, the council need to look at, okay, we should really look at realistically a 2 to 3% increase every year to keep us in that grant eligible deal and plus that funding available so that we can pay to get the engineering done out of pocket. So that, and then when you do that, when you have matching funds, if you spent $200,000 for the engineering, that counts toward the matching fund.
Okay.
So, like I said, there's a lot of moving forward that makes,
And the council,
Robbie,
Are these listed in which ones in the worst condition, like the Park Avenue?
no,
Needs to happen first?
they're just listed in all of the ones we know of that need work. So part of the deal is, this is still under the draft, so if you go back to the very back of it where it does the rating, how you rate them and where, you know, under the public health and safety, the cost factor, the eligibility of grants, so what you do is when we get this done, then James and I and we'll sit down and with the input, okay, we really think that water line, that them cast iron lines would need replaced first. So that takes the Grant Avenue, the 7th Street, the Park Avenue is an old, asbestos line. See, that one's kind of comes to the top under that reason, for the public health and safety. So what we do is we rate them all, and that would kind of separate them as far as the water goes, which one first, which one second, third. And what neighborhood, well, my water line on the, my pressure on this end of town is really, I think it's the pressure reducing valve there, so. But we're looking at something there, the pressure reducing valve is something we could probably, with our water deal, we could pay the majority of them out of pocket. We need to get, with this preliminary engineering report, that's part of the deal they're gonna do, is a pressure deal throughout the whole system. And they will tell us, well, boy, your pressure is good here, but you're way over pressure here. One of the deals, we'll show to be under pressure up the Kainu Avenue, because they're a dead end line. They are fed, all the water goes, the gravity feed goes to the south, or the north, and then has to feed it back up then to the south. So it's feeding back uphill, so when you get to the end of Kainu, their pressure is really low. But when you go down on the north end, you know, 5th Street area, you people have tons of pressure.
Can Kainu get tied into?
The hospital has 120 pounds of pressure.
That'd be going across the.
Kainu, what, in that Kainu project, what it would be is, we looked at, and we're looking at looping it in, actually going through the rest of Kainu and tying in at Park Avenue, which would then open up all those people on Kainu who are sewer only. There's no water available for them. That would bring them in to our water system and bring more users into our water system.
Dave,
Mayor, I have a concern. We've now discussed two things that my perception is we are all on kind of the same page conceptually, at least. One of them is that we need to build an annual increase into our sewer rates so that we avoid the mass hike like we recently encountered 5 years ago. And then the second one is the concept of a stormwater utility fee. What I haven't heard is how do we get from, hey, that's a nice idea that we skip over and somebody remembers a year from now, into turning it into an action item? In your mind, is that something that, is it staff that'll start that? Is it Micah who works specifically with Public Works? How do we make these an action item and assign it to somebody so it turns into something real rather than just a passing sentence?
that would be Micah, and he can work with Rebecca to get that drawn up.
Thank you. You're welcome, Micah.
and the rate increase is done through a resolution, is that how it?
What's that?
So the rate increase for sewer and water done through a resolution?
And that should be probably water into.
Absolutely.
And the stormwater is a new utility and.
Let's carry on with the CIP. So we're on page 6.
Are we moving on?
Yeah, just move on.
On page
Go to
7,
Page 6.
table number 3, are any of those projects budgeted for this year?
The I&I study, that's the camera, we're working on that, getting the information to the engineers.
And
The
then-
updated wastewater, we haven't funded that yet, but that would be something, because we're running into that 5th year of the PER we did for the wastewater 5 years ago. The metals removal, that's why it's telling you under DEQ, so we are still working, on that, getting the information to DEQ, the stuff they're asking for, and like I said, that's something, every engineer you talk to, you go to these, deals, and that they're gonna, when DEQ gives their presentation, they always bring that up, that this is something here, and it's nationwide, that's not something, saying that's a nationwide deal about, and the lagoon liner is just something that they brought up, because was put in 2002, so, but we had it looked at 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and we're in great shape. So that's not something I anticipate seeing come up, it's just something they, those are things we'll need to fund. The I&I is something we are working on whenever we get the opportunity and getting the information to them, so we can make those, like, part of that will be in the sewer system. There's where we're cammering some of these sewers, and you're literally see the water coming into the sides of them old clay tiles. So lining them and stopping that happen, there's some of the I&I disappearing. Getting the stormwater out of it, we're losing, and so the less water we have going down there that isn't coming through your faucet and it down your pipe, the better off we are at the sewer plant.
Move on forward. What do you got?
Page 8.
Okay.
The streets projects. These are all put out as complete streets with parking lanes, two-way traffic, curb, gutter, sidewalk, boulevards. Is there any way we can break that out? But I think to be even reasonable, yeah, I mean, to be reasonable, we're gonna have to probably deal with the failing bases, the inadequate drainage, and the deterioration of the pavement. And then work on,
So like I said, let's just take this for example. So when we move on the stormwater, we come up Hagan Avenue, replace that stormwater, we have new sewer on Hagan Avenue, we have new water on Hagan Avenue. When we put the stormwater up Hagan Avenue, there's nothing else under that street that's gonna be necessary to tear it up. That's why didn't we pave those streets? We passed it because we know we're gonna tear it up again. But when we're done there, part of that project could be, okay, when that's done, instead of patching this asphalt, we're gonna put, and part of stormwater is not, they're not gonna put a storm drain on every corner. Part of it is curb and gutter to direct the water to the storm drains. So you're gonna do, if you do the curb and gutter up there, which also, when you do one street, that's why you see all of the streets that are in there actually go north and south. Because when you do them, you do half a block both ways. And that ties the east and west streets in. So if we do the Hagen, so we're doing that stormwater, well, they determine, well, we need to put curb to bring that water to this drain here, and so that's part of it would be putting the curb gutter, and then you pave the whole thing curb to curb. Your parking lanes are done, your curb and gutters in, your boulevards are determined, it's all kind of but that's where would help with some of the funding of the streets, because there is no grant money, there's no nothing, you can't get money to pave streets.
Unless it's part of that.
As part of that, but also there are grants out there for sidewalks, for, so I mean, there's grants that we can tie in with it if we're gonna do the street. But part of that in the storm, when you do the storm deal, part of it would be curb and gutter, because you're directing that water to the storm drain.
Micah.
So to find this funding, you need to create a district, correct?
That would be, I would like to see a streets district, but then, like I said, there goes again, paying study, but that would have to be a citywide street maintenance district, that brings this funding in, so okay, we're gonna do this stormwater, we're gonna repair the sewer here, so now this street is complete, it's good. We know we're not gonna tear it up again, the water, the sewer, everything that's under the street is good. We move forward to try and put that pavement.
Only curb and gutters included in the storm?
No, curb, gutter, and pavement. Once you put curb and gutter and you pave it from end to end, side to side.
So the streets are already gonna be redone.
And some of these, because that will be part of stormwater deal is getting that water to flow the right direction. If you don't bring it down the curb and gutter to the right place, and you're not gonna get your stormwater controlled like you want to. So, like I say, that becomes part of it in the design of it. And so part of the funding could be part of that stormwater would fund putting the pipe in plus putting the curb and gutter, and then the pavement would come, when it's done, it has to be paved. So you could get pavement
So
money.
it's a partial city paving?
Yeah, there would be, it would go out in the bid form, it would say, we're gonna put this in your term, and then so the paving would be in that bid of that project, would be all part of it, so it would be part of that, but that's where we can get the funding for the stormwater itself, for the deal, but some of that funding, we would have to do an SRF or something, but if we had a street district money to add into that, we could, it would make it more affordable as we move forward over the next 10 or 12 years. When you get the storm, you'd also be getting the streets.
Yeah.
Is the streets something that the council and the mayor want to have considered by the resort tax group? The streets part of the resort tax?
It's infrastructure. As far as I'm concerned, streets are infrastructure.
My feeling
Yeah.
to
I would like
answer
a
your
piece of
question.
pie to go to it.
I'm apprehensive, particularly as we already talked about. So stormwater, I can understand, that's a health and safety that in our ranking, that takes that up as pretty high. We're already talking about increasing water and sewer, we're talking about adding a stormwater fee. I'm a little bit apprehensive to charge forward with the streets maintenance district until some of the other things.
Oh, I absolutely think we have to deal with some of the other stuff first.
I'd agree too.
But we have to have a long-range plan
Yeah, you have
of how we're gonna move forward and.
Get
Yeah,
some
one
numbers.
at
And I liked your idea where you were using dollars from sewer, from a lot of the places that we got grants, that you are able to use that in certain situations to do the streets, and that shows some improvement and some progress.
Rob,
And you just stated that the paved street makes the sewer work.
Makes the
the
stormwater.
water, yeah, the stormwater flow properly. So that would have to be a part of it.
Yeah, see, part of the design of the stormwater would also be designing, they shoot the grade, well, the water's coming here, but we aren't gonna put a pipe in the ground from here to here. There's not gonna be a pipe and a drain on every corner. But the curb and gutter are gonna direct that, and you'll also, there's places where you'll see there's a dip, a concrete dip going across the street. You'll see that in different towns, well, that's part of the stormwater control, because rather than run here, it's gonna cross the street here and go to another. I mean, it's all part of the design of stormwater, also is how the stormwater gets to the drain.
anything else on streets?
I saw a dip in Casper, Wyoming when I was a kid. That you could water ski down, get pulled by a car alongside it.
I think we've talked about storm storage system.
They're all tied together.
Out
I mean,
there.
they're all tied together, the water, the sewer, the streets, and the storm, they're all tied together in one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Moving on to parks.
Parks.
Yeah.
Mayor, I had several sections and questions on parks. One of them is a lot of these numbers, didn't seem to align with it. So one of them we had on there was the swimming pool, which specifically calls out a $5 million number. As we've been having conversations over that over the last couple of months, it has been a number significantly under 5 mil.
That number came out of the park, or the pool study.
Yeah.
And the same thing, when they did the pool study, those numbers were based on, here's the cost, here's what we estimate, until you design that pool, and no, you don't know the exact cost. So I'll guarantee you, they put a bigger number in here than what we could I mean, we can, that, you work on getting the number down.
So
This is,
That's,
the second bullet on page 14, where it's talking about irrigation systems and landscaping, that specifically includes the cemetery and parks. I had a question of whether cemetery should be struck from that now that that's its own district.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and again, some of the other numbers about replacing parks and recreation equipment and trees, it was like $30,000 for parts. I wanted some more clarity if this is a one-time thing, some of these things to me fell under kind of regular maintenance, and again, it caused me concern when I look at what we budget for annually, and I just wanted to raise that as a question, because I couldn't tell if this was a one-time thing, if this was really belonged under maintenance, or if it belonged in the CIP.
Diane?
Buy a bucket truck.
I wanted to talk about the indoor recreation center that's on the CIP that was done from a capital needs survey in 1997.
and it's been carried into every
And
CIP since.
I think we need to have a real conversation about that, because since 1997, we built a new high school with a brand new gym with a walking track, a weight room. We have a fire department that has its own facility. We have the Pollard that has its own facility. We have the Civic Center that has a facility that's used for open volleyball, basketball, soccer. We have Well Approach Fitness. We have the yoga studios. We have the dance studios. The population in Red Lodge in 1990 was 1958. And this all comes back to me because it's when we built Napa, and we were told that the population of Red Lodge was gonna explode and double in 5 years in 1997. And then it was gonna explode and double again 5 years later. And as we know, in 1990, it was 1958. And at the last census, we were at 2125, and I suspect that next year's census will be less than that. And I just think to carry on this indoor recreation center as if it's a reality in Red Lodge it's not. We have a multi-use community with lots of things, so let's take care of them and maintain them and make them usable and take this out of the CIP.
I agree with you, strike it from the CIP. It was only carried forward because it's been carried forward.
Is there any downside to striking it?
Not that I can think of, because is that a realistic something the city is going to fund?
I wanna invite everybody to go on up to the high school and check out the gymnasium. You'll be amazed what you'll see there.
Well, and the school wants to partner with the city on something.
Yes.
Well, the reason I ask my question is because there's a lot of things that here, we've heard pipe dreams or pie in the sky, but there is value to keeping them here because they do give us access to grant money. And so my question to Jim is specifically, can you anticipate or see any grant or source of funds that we will lose if we strike that?
Not that I'm aware
Grant
of.
for a rec center. It would be a grant for a rec center. We don't need one.
I look at my notes, I had a question mark there as well.
And as far as the pool goes, again, I'm gonna say this is a hot topic that the community needs to have a discussion about. The financing, the operation, the maintenance. It is coming up in our resort tax conversations, and I hope that people pay attention. And it's time to have that discussion. We discussed the closing of the recycling center at 4 public meetings and had no discussion about the closing of the pool. So there's my spiel on that.
Okay, moving on.
Pace.
Municipal buildings. Comments?
Yeah, I have a few comments on that. Is the current construction and remodel that went on in the police department finished? Is it compliant with our city codes? Does it meet the ADA compliancy? And how much would it cost to make it compliant?
As far as making it compliant, we haven't,
Budgeted this
we
year.
have in the budget
Yeah,
for the
we-
ramp.
Yeah,
Also the finishing where the garage door was blocked off. And then we are complete.
So it meets city code?
Yes.
My understanding is for ADA, we just have to show progress each year.
Well, they did a
To
whole
be
new
making
remodel.
progress.
If I were a business doing a remodel, I would have to come into complete code of compliance. The city hall should have to too.
And, yeah, and there's, there's rules that say, and it specifically says a significant, in order to come into compliance and not be covered by that progressive thing, it requires a significant structural change, which I don't think we,
Go read your city
Well,
codes. If a business downtown had done a remodel such as what happened back here, they would not open their doors. They would be red tagged until it was compliant.
You would not get a certificate of occupancy if it's not complete.
Municipal buildings. Anything else on there?
I questioned the needing of 2 showers. I don't know why we need a separate men's and women's. I think 1 shower for both if we have to have a shower. And I'm not sure that's interior furniture is a priority, but.
Any other comments on municipal buildings? Then we move into the potential funding sources.
what about 2.7 and 2.8, police department and library?
Oh, okay. 2.7?
How many vehicles does the RLPD currently have in their fleet?
7, 8. The one Tahoe has to go away,
Right.
so we have 8.
8 vehicles. And how old is the oldest?
Great question.
I believe it's either 2003 or 2005.
And then we have 6 that are fairly new because they've been purchased the last 6 years. I find it interesting that they need 8 vehicles for 7 officers. Do the officers take them home?
Not all, ones in the city limits do,
Where are they stored when they're not?
in the garage.
So how many on a typical day are stored in the garage? I mean, how many officers live in the city limits? I know of 1. The chief.
So it's in the 5 mile donut,
Right,
so,
and I think there's at least 5 that usually are sitting back there.
yeah.
Like I said, there's the one Tahoe that, is going to be get rid of, but
Well, I'm not convinced that Red Lodge needs 3 new police cars every 3 to 6 years.
The
If that 5 are sitting back there in storage.
So the police cars are assigned to each individual, so they don't get that 24/7 runtime on them. So each one has their own patrol car, so they have their own gear in it, and they take it out when they gotta go out on patrol. So the mileage just kept way down, so.
I think that would say that they don't need to be replaced as frequently if the mileage is being kept down.
I think that's why,
I think that's something we seriously need to look at.
I think we need to look at the mileage probably on them and see.
The comment that I had is I just think that that needs to be tied to when we have kind of a funding priorities discussion for the community public hearing. I think that needs to be there, and again, I think we need to have that SLA discussion from all of our department heads, and I think that's on council for us to put together that request to prepare us to have that public hearing meeting.
Robbie?
Time and time again, that is the number 1 topic anybody in town, is they feel we're over policed. Somebody said they came from Glendive. They have twice as many people in half the police department. It was just mentioned to me while I was almost late, is, we're the county seat, so we have the sheriff's department right here. If there's an emergency, this is the county seat, Lori.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But they don't.
And the sheriff, well, they're responsible to, if they're needed. we may not want to.
I think that's a discussion that needs to go with Chief Wells. so.
Yeah.
Well, that was, that had never crossed my mind. I remember you talking at one point early on, before your election is, that having the sheriff's department here is a big plus.
Working together with them is even a bigger plus.
And again, this is, we've had this conversation before, and when you say, how much police do the residents of Red Lodge get or entitled, as much as they're willing to pay for, but we need to have that as a real conversation and realize that there's costs associated with the coverage that we have.
They want way less.
See, what do they say? Remember, this is a living document, and these things, we'll rate these in the deal, and then our deal, well, can we really truly do this at this time? So this, as we did on the 2015, we had the priority list, but some of them priorities moved because of accessibility of funding and what was available. So I mean, everything we put in here is things we need to do, but does it need to be done today, tomorrow, or can we do more? I mean, the 2015, I wish I had brought it, and we acted very aggressively on that. I thought it was amazed me what we actually got done. Because when we first got that CIP and passed it, I thought there's no way that this stuff's gonna. But when you start looking and working on projects and finding funding, that's what makes it happen. And I don't have a problem being aggressive on it, but you also rate these, just like the police department car. Well, you're gonna go through the rating and say, well, where does that fit in the publics and the, how does it rate? Where do we wanna put that? Where's it gonna, the funding? And then the other deal is when you get there, part of the funding is part of what rates it. How much funding is available? Is it all out of the city tax dollar? Is there grants available? I mean, that's how the rating, and then like I said, it's a living, it can be moved. It can be, if something should come up that there's funding, you can move something in there within this 5-year period. We can make things happen when the Force Main, we took $9 million for the project and turned it into $2 million. Because we had the availability and studying it, looking at it, and I mean, that's all movable, all rated, I mean, it's still a living document, we can maneuver it, that's why we do this. Once we pass this every year, we have, where are we on it, what are we doing, and that's how we move so much forward on the other ones, by looking at what we were able to do and moving, adjusting things around. It's just the way they work. They're a great document, a great thing to work off of as a council, as a department head. I look at what I've got on there and what can I do, where can we move?
Diane?
I just wanna, again, just reiterate that as we go forward with the renewal of the resort tax, this is probably one of the biggest complaints I get. Is the police cars in the resort tax, and is that the best way to spend the money? And that is a discussion that the resort tax committee is going to be having.
Library.
Mayor, I had a question, on how this fits into the city CAP. My understanding is that the majority of the library is separate and through the county. And so I just wanted some clarification on how we determined, there was a recent problem that came up and we resolved it and fixed it from a city perspective.
It's a city building.
It's a city building,
We own
so
it.
that's why the building is in there.
But, so let me rephrase the question then with that clarification. Does the extent of the city's responsibilities really extend to the structure itself, and that ought to be the end of it?
That's a discussion that needs to be had.
Because within this even, we talk about a technology upgrade, I wouldn't call that a structure. I would think that would be something that would be done by the library funding that's on the wider scale than just the city. And shelving and furnishing, in real estate, there's attachments and there's fixtures. Based on the description you just had, I would think we're responsible for fixtures, for attachments, but not for stuff that's not attached.
And in the past, they have paid for those things.
The city has been part of the budgeting process at the library and has given money. So that's a discussion that we probably should be having at some point. But that's probably not a decision that you can make.
No, but I think, so part of it is, again, part of that priorities of the public discussion. But I would say, based on the answer that I just heard for CIP, we should probably only include things as part of our CIP that are tied to the building. Is that correct, Jim?
That's how I would feel, but I've been in meetings where that's not how the public feels as far as the library.
Most of the library upgrades on the building have been done by a trust fund, correct? Bob
Yes.
Moran
The new
and
entrance there, yes.
Yes.
several
This is
several
awesome.
people that are that have
Mhm.
That's
benefited
paying
that
for that.
library.
I guess my question is, should we be striking technology upgrade and new shelving finishings on page 17 from the city CIP?
I think first we have to have that discussion on how much does the city help fund the library?
That's why this is in front of us today. I mean, that's what this, should it be in the CIP? I don't know why not. I mean, the community is very tied to the library. But does it belong, is it something that would rate high as far as in the CIP and the funding sources? That's where, you know, you move it around, and some of that they would fund out of their budget, and like, on the building parts, I think that's something we need to look at, is the city's building. I agree the same thing. Does it belong there? I don't know.
It would be
if you
good
want
for-
it- If you want it out of there, that's what we.
I
It would
can
be good
see,
for the librarian.
I
to
can
be
see
involved
the
in
benefit, I can see the benefit of access to grant money by keeping it in there, as you're saying that.
This is minor, and you probably can't speak to it, maybe Jody could better. But I noticed there's money in here for roof parapet and facade repairs. Well, we just put solar panels on the roof. Why wouldn't we do that beforehand?
And they did have
So-
that, they had it, the roof inspected before.
They did.
Yeah. Potential funding sources. Dave,
This on page 18 specifically calls out in the third paragraph, Red Lodge has the 3% resort tax. I saw no mention of the 1%, and I think we ought to make sure that gets added in here, that we have the potential of the 1%.
Well, we haven't got that yet.
No, I said potential.
No. The other people will think we've got it. I think.
Yeah, we have it now, so yeah,
Yeah, I think
she's
we'll
right.
get it, yeah.
Until
But
it's
We don't have it now.
passed.
The title is potential funding sources. The state legislator just gave us an option that I would say is a potential funding source.
It does have strings attached to it of what it can be used for, though.
Diane,
There, in that same sentence that Dave was talking about, it says all goods and services, and I think it should say luxury.
Yeah, that whole thing is,
Because it's not all goods and services that are taxed.
the whole thing is bad.
And then down on, I questioned the $947,000 that we collect in resort tax because we haven't ever collected that much. This 18-19 was the highest at 855 for 330, so I don't know where that number came
I
from.
don't know where they got that
I
number.
don't know where they got that either.
And then on that same paragraph, it says this 79% of the funds can be used for the direct improvement or to make payments on loans, including the funding sources listed below. This was actually a question that came up last night at resort tax, and can the resort tax money be used for bonds or loans? Somebody said it could be
That's
used,
what Tom King's for their research.
there you go.
Okay, Becky's on it.
Hey, I looked at it and I had an answer, it's upstairs,
That's fine, that was my question, so,
cause it was something in the new thing about bonds,
Yeah.
the 1%.
yeah, that was a discussion we had last night, so.
That's good,
I'm glad I
thank
know.
you.
You're welcome.
Anything else on funding here on the first page, page 18? 19? Move on to 20. talks about the methodology of prioritizing. Any comments?
Under the methodology, it said public health and safety, public opinion, cost, and grant eligibility. And how was the opinion of the public taken into consideration?
What do you mean, how that?
It just says the methodology, 4.1.
Yeah.
It says there were 4 major criteria: public health and safety, public opinion, costs, and grant eligibility. And I just wondered, how did the public give its opinion? And where is it factored in? Because it's not down in the criteria 1, 2, and 3, there's no criterion 4 for public opinion. So I think we should probably strike that, because I don't think public opinion was taken into account.
I would propose that the solution, rather than striking it, is to get public opinion.
That would be a good idea too.
Well, public opinion, just like I was telling you, do the people in your district have brown water? Does that put that?
Well, there's more to the CIP
So
than
the
brown water.
public opinion comes through the council, as far as my deal, is, when you look at these projects, and they're in your district, what is the opinion of your people? What are you being told? What do they want? We have public hearings on different things, public calls me about concerns, and then so, I think public opinion comes in there through the council, through the staff, and there are, the public does, a lot of them let us know what they think, and then as council people, and you bring that forward. Is that not counting as public opinion?
Well, you're right that people do come to us and come forward, but I don't think it was used in the methodology of this particular CIP and how things were rated, as I read it.
So she's saying, maybe, the Great West has no idea what the public opinion is, even though we've discussed it tonight.
Yeah.
They didn't have any of that input when they created this.
But I hope we do get public opinion as we move forward.
That town hall meeting or whatever you proposed is a good place to find that out.
I think so.
Public opinion.
Is that being struck then?
What's that?
Public opinion, is that being struck from the methodology or not?
That's what Diane wanted it struck.
Well, I just wanna know where it came from.
Anything else? Page 21, 22, anything?
Marker.
It looks pretty yellow over there.
There was a lot of yellow.
Yeah.
I have two page 22s, that'll go.
Certainly we'll need to update the table on page 23, but that's.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I assumed that this table was actually this sheet.
This one here.
Yeah, cause it has the same headers and the rankings and, so that's what, this was just a sample and this is what they came up with. That's my
Page
interpretation.
numbers have to be fixed.
Well, thanks for taking the time to go through that. That's very helpful.
Where do we go from here with this?
It goes back to Great West. This is just kind of the.
What we do is get all of your things into James and myself, of what we, changes or things we wanna do in there, and then we put them, and then they will give us another draft, or, something to pass, and then accept it as the new CIP.
Comment from the public on the CIP. Yes, Teresa.
Are we in open council?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, so Teresa Whistler, 614 South Broadway. I think it's relevant to leave in the comment about public comment, even if we don't have it's not stated in the document how it is. But it's a good placeholder and a reminder that there should be public comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Let's move on to the Energy Corps member MOU. Discussion at the table.
Looks good.
what we've done every year.
Came from Energy Code people, I think it.
Dave?
I had some input, I had a chance to chat with Corey on this and just wanted to share with the council. This is, pretty, standard, we've done this before, kind of matter of fact. On page, I thought these were numbered, on the second page, they are not numbered. There was a question about the supervisor, or one of the things that we will do is we will designate a supervisor. It's also referred to a little bit later. Corey's input was she'd be happy to serve, but she was not sure that she was necessarily the best person for that. I think that's a separate conversation from approving the document, but I wanted to share that so I didn't lose it in the discussion. Her feelings were not gonna be hurt if it was determined that there was somebody that was more appropriate, whether it be somebody at City Hall or from council, to do that.
Is this to replace Catherine?
Yes.
Correct, and as a
I thought there was
reminder,
somebody-
we have interviewed that person, and an offer was extended. After that was actually, they were waiting for us to approve the budget before an offer was extended, but they had promised the candidates, as we met with them and discussed with them, that they would get back with them, and there was initially a concern whether it needed to come to council because we hadn't done the MOU yet. However, by the time we followed up, we had already extended an offer. So in my perspective, what we need to do is now move forward to just rapidly, make sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, which is this document, which does come before us to do.
So that doesn't involve Corey, that you have a person found for the position, we just,
Yeah, Corey was part of that process. The one question that I had, was if our city attorney had already read through and approved this, and if not, then I would probably stick the same stipulation on it when we bring it before council, pending approval of the city attorney. Then we would authorize the mayor to go ahead and sign it.
who is this new person?
Have they accepted?
Yes.
My understanding is they have accepted,
Headed to training and Butte is the next step.
there was a,
So I just got that today, so
Cool.
I can't give you a date, so.
I see. Put it on the agenda.
Okay.
if you see how many little scribble notes on, you'll be really impressed if that's all I had to say.
All right, good. Anything else at the table?
I just have something that, it's not on the agenda, but it's just a quick little write-up about, the resort tax committee
Oh,
and
great.
our meetings and
Meeting
how we're moving
minutes?
forward. It's not the minutes, it's just what we did, and, as the minutes are approved, and we did our bylaws, we did our board, we did our committee for our chairman. So, just a really quick blurb about what's going on and how we're moving forward.
Thank you.
I figure every council meeting will come, because we're meeting a lot.
Yes,
We're moving things forward, so,
thank you for doing that.
yeah, no problem.
Mayor, if y'all got a copy of the surplus list,
Yeah,
what it is these are, equipment stuff we have that would like to put on surplus, we have to have the approval of the council. And what this is, they wouldn't all go on right away, like the backhoe, we would keep it, we did get funded through this last year to get a skip drag. That would replace that backhoe. So when we it won't be in until December, January. So once we receive that piece of machinery, we can replace, some of these others. And as you're all aware, the streets budget is pretty low, so like, by getting rid of some of these and getting that money back into we were able to move forward and get other, like that trench box we've got on there. It's been sitting in the same place for probably 12 years and never moved. We don't have a piece of equipment to move it with. It's a large trench box, which we have a smaller one we use, and we would like to, there's actually some newer things that would work better for the project we're on, that we could sell that and purchase some smaller trench boxes that are more usable for us to protect our men in the trenches. That GMC fifth wheel belly dump, we've never used it. Just telling you, it's a nice ornament out there we've had people stop by and say, wow, that was one of, Skip Boyer's projects, we built that out of an old trailer. It's not a feasible piece. The John Deere grader, the smaller one with our two loaders and the skip rig, we don't need both graders, we'd like to keep the bigger one. The Bobcat, the older Bobcat, after we got the newer one, we find that we don't use it that much, and in fact, we haven't used it hardly. So we'd like to put them out on public surplus, sell them, put the funding back into our equipment deal, so that then we can take advantage and get the equipment that we need.
Thanks.
Jim, looking at the dates, is it safe to assume that all of these are off the books as far as depreciation goes?
Oh, yeah.
Do we need to do a resolution?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Got it.
why would we not do all of these on one resolution and have it done?
Well, that's what I'd like to do it, but like I said, we wouldn't put these, like, we won't put the backhoe on surplus until we have the piece of machinery to replace it.
Okay, that's the part I was missing, is why would we not get rid
That's
of
the
it?
whole thing, that I can do that, then when the time comes, I would put them, and that's a state law, we have to put them on public surplus or have an auction, which we, there's no, it's better, the public surplus seems to have worked out really well for us. The old generator that sat in the water plant and hadn't run for 15 years, we put it on there, didn't think we'd get a bike, we sold it for $2,000.
Don't tell my husband.
He'd look good in that old belly dump.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he would.
Any public comment out there? We have about 20 minutes. Teresa?
Just a quick announcement. There is a tree planting for Arbor Day at the north side of the library on Friday at 5:30. And it won't be a lot of hard work, it'll be light work, and it'll be a good celebration, so I hope everybody will come.
Friday at what time?
5:30.
5:30
Thank you.
in the snow, yeah.
Any other public comment? Is everybody good?
Who's good?
Want to call it?
Can we
Meeting
put this-
adjourned.
All right.
Can we put this on the agenda for the next?
Yes.
Yes.
Lonnie said she's gonna do the resolution.